Hello, this is Mr. Hatton, and we are again working in Microsoft Word. And today we're going to be working with inserting and formatting tables within Microsoft Word. And so the first thing to see about it is that the options with tables are under the Insert tab. So if you click the Insert tab, and you'll see there's actually a table group, and this is going to be where all of our information is found for setting our tables. So we're going to click the drop down menu, and we can see a couple ways that we can insert tables. First of all, first is that we can click and drag across this grid here, and it gives us the different options. So it's changing the rows and the columns and numbers based on how far I drag out. You can see that they're being highlighted on the page as they are selected. And so the biggest you can make using this method is a 10 by 8 table, but you can choose any options within that. And so we're going to go ahead and just create a 5 by 5 table just to see kind of what that looks like. So another way, we're actually going to add several tables into this document first. So the one was to drag using the grid. The next one is going to be to use insert table. And when we do that, we actually set the number of rows and columns. So you can get much higher than the 10 by 8 that we could in the other, so we can go up to very large numbers of columns. But we can set those there as well. And then we can choose options as far as how we want it to fit on the page, or if we want it to be set in a certain direction. So the columns and rows, columns are your vertical cells going up and down, the rows are going side to side, and each individual box within that is going to be called a cell. So we're just going to click OK. Let's make it a 4 by 4, and we'll see that appears there. You can see that it adjusted the size of the cells so that even though this top one has 5 columns and the bottom one has 4 columns, it actually made the table the same size because it automatically adjusted the width of the columns to fit the page. We can change that by making it smaller or larger, and we'll look at in just a moment how we can change individual cells within the document. The next way that we can add a table, I'm going to place the insertion point down lower, is go to the drop down and use the draw table option. What this does is you can see that it gives us what looks like a pencil here, and the first thing it's going to do is allow us to draw a box or cell the size that we want it to be. One thing I will show you as we are drawing this under the table design, we have options where we can change how we want that to look, what we want the border to look like. But then we can actually go in and we can draw our individual boxes. And sometimes it can be tricky making sure that the computer is identifying where you have selected. But so there I selected, and I'm creating individual cells based on where I'm dragging them to. You can see that the computer will auto fix that, like it'll put everything in place automatically and try to guess where it is that you're going with. So we can draw dividers to make all of our different cells. And this gives you a way to customize a table or a chart within Microsoft Word. And so now that we have those, we've seen 3 different ways that we can create a table. And now I want us to see some options that we have with actually formatting the cells within the table. And one thing that you'll notice is that actually when we have created the tables, we've actually added a couple new tabs to the top of the document, which have actually given us some more options. We've got the Table Tools option, which gives us a design and a layout tab on how we want to format the tables themselves. So the first thing that I'll show you is that when I click in this cell, we can see that it now gives us an option for table styles. Make sure we've got our table selected here. And so now we've got it selected. We can go to the design option, click this drop down under the table styles, and see that there's some preset options with color that we can select. It gives us shading options, so like if we wanted to have just the first row colored to where we could set our titles, or if we wanted like the first column and the first row so that we could have our entry points, our data entry and our items there to be easily understood by the user. You can see that it's giving me a preview over here of each one as I'm mousing over it. That's a standard option within Microsoft Word. It's going to make those changes. So let's just pick one just to look at it. And so you can see that it has given us banding with with each of the rows that makes it easier to read, and it has made the first row, the first row and the first column are both the darker shades that they would stand out and make it easier to understand where you're going. We can also set our options. Let's use this table that we created. We can also set options over here. Some table style options come up that we can check and uncheck. First, whether or not we want to have a header row, whether we want the rows to be banded, meaning that they're going to be divided so that we can easily see that it's going to give us our options within the cells themselves. And then we can also change the shading. So just as we did in this first example, we can also individually shade each box. If you maybe didn't like the way any of the preset options, we can change the shading for each individual cell on their own. So we can set those options there as well. When we go to the borders, we could also add a special border if we wanted to using our border options. We can also edit the cells themselves. So we created these two were both created with standard cell or table options, and so but if we wanted to say let's make this a title row instead of making it a group of individual cells, what we can do, we can select those, and then we can look at our formatting options to where we can actually make some changes within them. So if we use the merge cells option, what that's going to do, it now just change that from 5 individual cells into one large cell. So an advantage where this would be if we wanted to have a title. I'm going to pin our toolbar back up. It got removed. But so we can actually add a table here. So if we wanted to do table title, we can now select that, and it's all in one cell as opposed to different ones. We can go back to the Home tab, center that as well. We can make changes with our font sizes. We can change the font and any of our other options, make it italics, bold, underline, however we wanted to do that. All of the other options are still possible. And so then we can do that in any place if we wanted these to be the same cell. Select the cells that you want to merge, go to the layout option, and then we would select merge cells. And now they've become one large cell that could be changed. With an individual cell selected, also under the layout tab, we can make individual changes to a cell. You can see that we're making it taller here, or we can make it shorter. We can also change the width, which is then changing the rest of our document as well. We can change the text direction, so if we wanted to be able to write up and down, it's now going to turn that so that the writing goes the opposite direction. We can change that in multiple ways and then back to the beginning. We can set cell margins as well. The default is to 0. But what this is going to do, if we want to set that, you can see that it's moving the text off the top just as the margins of the paper move the text away from the edges of the document. If you set the margins within the cell, it's going to determine how far away from the top, bottom, left, or right the text is from the edges of that cell. The next option that I want to show you is how we can actually split cells. And so if we wanted to, we looked at how we could merge multiple cells into one cell, but we can also go the other direction with it. We can take a single cell and make that into multiple cells. So I'm going to select just this one single cell, and then I'm going to go into, in the merge options, I'm going to split the cell. And so I can tell it how many cells I now want this one to become. So I'm going to say that I want 2 columns, but I want to keep it at 1 row. So what that should do is add a divider. So it's going to make it 2 columns within this one area. Then we're going to click OK, and you can see that now we have an additional cell here. So those are in different locations that we could type, so we could format our text differently there. The next option that I want you to see is something that we can do within our tables, which can be very useful, is actually sort the information that's within the table. And so one way to do that, I'm just going to enter in some information here just for us to see. Let me put some names. And then just so that we can see that the information is staying together, so I've put these intentionally out of alphabetical order here. I'm going to insert the numbers with them just so that we can see where they are. So right now they're initially set up 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we're going to see what happens when we change that information. So what I'm going to do is select all of our information here. And then just in the data section, I'm going to go and use the A to Z sort. So the sort feature here. One thing I do need to do is tell it to not look for a header row, so that it will just look at all the text. If we had a header, it would ignore that first row. So I'm going to tell it no header row, so it's not looking for a header row, and then I want it to be ascending, and we'll see what happens here. So we'll click OK. And then now you can see that it has now moved these to alphabetical order. Alicia, Bobby, Carly, Dan. And then you can see the numbers moved with them. So this data actually changed in order to stay with the name since we sorted it by column 1. If we made the changes here, so like if you had a different option, you wanted to sort it by a third option, let's just put in some letters here. You could have this be whatever data that you wanted, but we're just going to use our letters so that we can see for the sake of the example. We'll go to the sort option. This time, instead of sorting by column 1, we're going to sort it by column 3. Click OK. And now you can see it has moved these, kept the information together, but this time it's alphabetical order based on column 3. So that's how we can sort tables, insert tables, format some of the issues with just some of the basics of looking at how can we add margins, how can we add different shading and border options, and in the next lesson we'll also look at how we can actually import an Excel table and then how we could use more advanced features with that.